Hey everybody, welcome in for another season of high school football in Shelby County. We're just a few days away from the 2018 season kicking off. We're out here at Calera High School where the Calera Eagles will be hosting the Pelham Panthers in our game of the week this Friday night. So I wanted to make sure and go ahead and broadcast out here for our first big game of the season. We have a huge first week slate scheduled this Friday night, and it's going to be a lot of fun. This entire season is going to be a lot of fun to watch unfold. We're going to be doing these preview and recap shows every week like we did last season, so this is something that you'll get used to. Normally we'll have a lot to recap. We'll be talking about our SCR Stars of the Week, all that kind of stuff. This week there's not really much to recap. We did have some action in the AISA and ACSC this past Friday night that we will talk a little bit about. But the first thing I want to do is dive in, talk about our game of the week here between Calera and Pelham. Then we'll break down classification by classification, all the big matchups that we have coming up on Friday night. Just one quick announcement that I want to make. We do have our football magazine coming out this week, which should be fantastic yet again this year. We put a lot of work into it from my standpoint of the content as well as the designers, and it looks great. This year we're going to have 4 covers again. We'll have a Chelsea cover with Todd Justice on the cover there, a Pelham cover with Casey Clark, a receiver there at Pelham. And then we also have our main cover, which is going to feature Briarwood's J.R. Tranrino, and also our Thompson edition, which will have Talia Tungavaloa on the cover. All look fantastic, and we'll have the main overall cover, the Briarwood one, in the paper this Wednesday in the Shelby County Reporter, so make sure you're on the lookout for that. Otherwise, we'll be handing out those magazines, those special editions, at each home game, or the first home game for each of those teams that has a special edition. Otherwise, we will be handing out that overall main cover at the first home game for every school as well. So be on the lookout for the magazine. A lot of great content in there, from feature stories to season previews, schedules, rosters, breakdowns for each teams. It's a lot of stuff in there, so you should get some interest out of that for your respective team and hopefully see your player's name in there as well. So you have that to look forward to. We have a great slate of high school football games to look forward to as well. They've just started putting the lines on in the end zone and the sidelines and the yardage markers here at Calera High School. So football season's here, and it's going to be an action-packed year with a lot of excitement that we're going to break down throughout the year. So stay tuned for all of that. But right now we're going to dive into our game of the week here at Calera High School. So obviously that first game that I do want to talk about is going to be our game of the week right here at Calera High School. We're going to have the Calera Eagles hosting the Pelham Panthers, and one thing we're going to notice a lot this year is the amount of talent in Shelby County. You know, I've grown up around this area my entire life, and I'm not sure there's ever been this much talent around the county itself. I mean, just so much, not just individual talent on each team, but the teams are loaded with it. So it should be a lot of fun to watch unfold throughout all of 16 of our county teams this year, but it's going to start right here in this game on Friday night between Calera and Pelham. And the reason I say that's because both teams are loaded with top recruits. For Calera, you have a defensive tackle in Jason Jones, who's committed to Alabama, one of the top players in the state and the country for the class of 2020. You also have quarterback Cornelius Brown, who's getting some strong looks and offers from Division I schools as well, and was an all-state player last year at the quarterback position for Calera. And then on the defensive side of the ball for Calera, you've also got guys like Trenton Yao, who's committed to Mississippi State. So there's plenty of talent on that Calera football team as well as the Pelham football team. Over there at Pelham, you've got guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and Ryan Jewell and Brock Higdon, who are going to be big-time playmakers and leaders, not only for that side of the ball, but the entire team. And then you look on their offensive side of the ball, bringing back their top 2 playmakers at receiver in Brandon Sledge and Edward Gibson. Those are going to be 2 big-time playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. The only key for for Pelham going into the season is going to be at the quarterback position, with Matthew Rye returning and Xavier Langford being a rising junior there, a guy that they're excited about for the future. Matthew Rye is a guy that played a lot last year before he got injured, which allowed Langford to step in and play a little bit as well. Last year, if you would have asked me, I would have said Langford would probably be the starter going into the season, simply because he had the better arm, seemed to be a more accurate passer, while Rye was a guy that just simply could run the ball. In the offseason, head coach Tom Causey's told me that Rye has really improved as a passer as well, so they have that to look forward to, and he says that neither quarterback really brings one thing more to the table than the other. That being said, I think we may see both of them in this first game against Calera, but they're going to have to get it figured out quickly. You don't want to have to play those 2 guys for a long period of time. You want to get somebody with some confidence moving forward into the season so that they can have the team kind of rally around them. Good news for Calera is the depth. They are loaded at just about every position. They seem to be too deep for the Panthers there. So if they're able to control the depth, stay healthy, that's going to be a big key. And I think they're a favorite in their region this year, really, along with Homewood. Those two teams should be battling for it. And that's the first region game for those two teams, too. They're going to take on each other very early on in the season to determine what I think could be the region champion there in that region between Pelham and Homewood. For Calera, they have a lot of talent back, as you heard me mention a minute ago, not just on the offensive side of the ball with Brown, but they've also got Tyler Agnew back at the running back position, all of their receivers back. They have 4 guys that had 230-plus yards a season ago, as well as 3 of those 4 that had 530-plus yards receiving. So a lot of talent for Brown to spread the ball out to. I think that's going to be a big key in this game. But as the season moves along, depth is going to be a concern for Calera, and it starts up front. Most of the guys on the offensive side of the ball on the line are going to have to play on the defensive side as well. Jason Jones, one that I mentioned earlier, will be playing on both sides, as will most guys. So they're going to have to build up some depth. They're going to have to get some of these young guys to step up. That being said, this is a very talented Calera football team with the ones out there. They are as talented as anybody in the state. And had they stayed in the 5A classification, I think they would have been a state championship contender and favorite to win it all this year, while moving over up to 6A is going to be a little bit of a challenge that we'll have to see how that unfolds this year. But that's going to be the key thing in this game, I think, is Pelham has the depth. Calera is going to have to show that they can hang with a big 6A team that has that kind of depth. So it should be a good battle, though. I expect this one to go down to the wire and be a close game for both teams to open the season. So since there are no games to recap and since there's some weather in the area, I'm going to try to make the rest of the show pretty quick and straightforward. But all we're going to do is go classification by classification, break down each of the matchups that we have coming up this Friday night. And we're going to start in 7A with the Thompson Warriors. They're going to be taking on James Clemens this Friday night in the Challenge of Champions down at the Crampton Bowl in Montgomery. So a big way for the Warriors to start the season. Obviously, I've talked about it in just about everything that I've done preseason-wise on the Warriors. Last year was a historic season, really one of their best football seasons in school history, and especially dating back to the 80s was the last time they were as good as they were last year. So last year's squad, really good, beat Hoover for the first time in school history, won a region championship, made it to the playoffs. There's so many positive things to build off of moving forward, and they've got some talent back that should make this another special year there at Thompson. It starts on offense with Talia Tungavaloa at quarterback, returning for his second year, already thrown for close to 9,000 yards in high school through 3 years of starting experience, which is more than his brother Tua, who's at Alabama. So that shows what kind of talent Talia is, and he's got plenty of weapons around him, especially at running back and on the offensive line. At running back, he's got Shadrick Bird back, as well as some other young guys that are going to step up, but Bird's one of those guys getting Division I looks when it comes to college as well. And they also have Amari Kite back on the offensive line, another Division I guy who's committed to Alabama right now, and he'll be joined by Jamie Simmons and some other good-sized guys on the offensive line. So that's going to create for some good flow offensively again this year. I think they're going to have the best offense in the state, to be honest with you, but he's going to have to connect with some new receivers. Michael Petway, Kyle Smoke are going to be 2 of those guys, and some other additions that should be make their names known throughout the season. But it's going to start with Petway and Smoke, who are going to have to step up and replace Mo and Ahmad Edwards, who had close to 3,000 receiving yards last year. Ahmad set a state record for receptions with 118, so that shows what can happen with Talia when he finds that guy that he clicks with. So he's going to have to do that pretty quickly here this season as they open with James Clemens, a top 10 team in the 7A classification, but also a team that finished 3-7 last year. They have an updated coaching staff, a really solid coaching staff. Vanderbilt committed quarterback, so they're going to keep this game close. Thompson was known last year for slow starts in the first half and then really pouring it on in the second half. I think this one's going to be close in the first half as well before Thompson's offense really gets going. Talia makes some of those connections with his receivers, and they go on to score a lot of points there in the second half. But I like Thompson in this one, and I like them really throughout the season moving forward as well. So the next game we're going to talk about is going to be a fun in-county matchup, a rivalry between Chelsea and Oak Mountain, one of those games that really gets the communities going for that first week of the season. They have the challenge there at Chick-fil-A on the corner of 119 and 280 to see which school can earn the most money throughout the week there. It's just a lot of fun for those two schools to come together, play this opening night game against one another. The last 2 years, they've renewed a rivalry. All-time, Oak Mountain leads at 5-1, but in the last 2 years with it renewed, it's a 1-1 series. Chelsea Chelsea taking one 2 years ago, 49-33. Oak Mountain winning last year, 21-10. So we'll see. The road teams won each of the last 2 matchups. We'll see what happens this Friday night. They take on each other at Hermont Park. Chelsea under a first-year head coach in Dustin Goodwin. So it should be interesting to see. He's an offensive kind of guy. Has some work to do with that defensive side of the ball, but Zeb Ellison back as the defensive coordinator really should help that transition as well. So having him at defensive coordinator and having Dustin Goodwin come in as an offensive kind of mind, I think that Chelsea's going to be in good hands this year, and they're building off of momentum. Won 2 of their last 3 games last year, albeit those were their only 2 wins of the season. That gives them some momentum moving forward into this season. Same can be said for Oak Mountain. Started last year 3-0 under Chris Bell, went on to lose 5 straight. And then they bounce back with 2 straight wins to end the season. So they've got that momentum rolling over into this season as well. I like both of these teams and the adjustments they've made. I think we're going to see a little bit something different on offense from Oak Mountain. I do think they want to try to spread the ball around because they know they're going to be competing in a difficult region. And this first game is going to be key in telling them whether they can do that. And it's going to start with the quarterback position. Luke Purser is one of the returning starters, one of the leaders on this team. He played running back last year. He'll be a guy they look for, but he's going to be battling with Evan Smith for that quarterback position. What they hope, I'm sure, is that Evan Smith can win out that situation, start at quarterback. That way they can have Luke Purser on the field as a talented running back and a talented young freshman quarterback there in Evan Smith as well. If those 2 guys step up and are electric, that could create for some fun and excitement as far as the Oak Mountain offense goes. Their defense should be really solid this year, so if that offense can get going, I expect some big things from Oak Mountain this year, and they could be a team that battles for that last playoff spot in a difficult region that features 3 top 50 teams in the country. So I think the last playoff spot in that region is going to come down to Oak Mountain and Spain Park. But a fun way to kick off the season for these 2 teams on Friday night as they take on, as Chelsea and Oak Mountain take on one another at Hermont Park. So I mentioned that Spain Park will be battling with Oak Mountain for that final playoff spot in Class 7A Region 3, and I think that's going to hold true. This is a Spain Park team last year that was so close to being so much better than they were. They started 3-0, ended up losing 5 of their final 8 games, but that after that 3-0 start, they really should have been 5-0, losing the last minute against Hoover thanks to a lucky Hail Mary pass that was completed over the middle of the field, going to lose 27-24 to their arch rival. Then they come back a week later, take on Mountain Brook, a chance for them to bounce back. Triple overtime, 51-50 loss. They win those 2 games. They're second in the region at the end of the season, and that makes their playoff run a lot easier of a path instead of having to start with Hewitt-Trussville in the first round of the playoffs. This year, they'll have a chance to compete with all 3 of the top teams in that region in Thompson, Hoover, and Hewitt-Trussville, but they'll also have that chance against Oak Mountain as well, which I think is going to be a make-or-break game. They're going to need to start fast. They need to get some momentum in their first game this Friday night as they take on Hillcrest Tuscaloosa at home, because what's going to happen? Vestavia and Mountain Brook come calling very early on in the season in region play. Those are must-win games. If they want to make the playoffs, they've got to win those 2 games. So it's important for them to get some early momentum in this game against Hillcrest, and a lot of people are high on Hillcrest Tuscaloosa heading into the season. I still think we need to see them prove some things, but last year they competed against Oak Mountain to a 1-point game and lost that one, and they showed that they could compete with Thompson in the final regular season game last year before making a run all the way to the semifinals of the 6A playoffs. So a 6A team that's shown they can compete with a 7A team, but I'm high on the Spain Park team simply because of their defense. I know when head coach Sean Rainey has a good defense, he's going to have a good football team, and this year he seems really confident in that side of the ball. Last year he was a little more concerned. I could sense it all over his voice this year that he was excited to see what the defense could do during this 2018 campaign. The offense is going to have some turnover there at quarterback with Mason Pronk taking over for Braxton Barker. Jalen Henderson's going to be the go-to running back, and then Kenyon Hines out wide at wide receiver. They have plenty of talent at those skill positions. I think once they get clicking and going early in the season, that's going to be a key for them to pair with that nice defensive side of the ball. But the defense will give them some time to warm up to things. Even if they lose this game to Hillcrest, they need to show some positives moving into region play, because that is a tough, difficult start when you take on Vestavia and Mountain Brook in 2 straight weeks. So the only other 6A game we have to talk about, having already discussed Chelsea and Pelham, is the Helena Huskies. And they made a home run hire in the offseason, in my opinion, by going out and getting Richie Busby up there from Fultondale, who had a tremendous season up there last year. I think they were 10-1, and it was just an unbelievable season for them. And he's gone to the playoffs every year he was at Fultondale. He hopes to carry that success over to Helena. It's obviously going to take some time with a team that's coming off a 1-9 season a year ago. Their only victory last year over Chilton County. So they do have some positives to look at. It sounds like the receiving core is really deep. They've got a returning quarterback in Luke Stamba that's an unbelievable talent, got a lot of playing time as a sophomore last year. So I really think that this offense can take some strides forward. And if the defense is improved at all, that's really going to help this team out, because the offense will have its chances, but they've also got to hope that the defense can get some stops, because they're not a team, while they have that offensive talent, that they're just going to be able to score points upon points upon points throughout the game. So they need the defense to really step up, make some plays this year. But either way, I think moving forward, this is going to be a good Helena football team in the next few years. They're taking on a McAdory team on the road this Friday night that's accustomed to success, is the team that made the playoffs, has made the playoffs for 21 consecutive years. And albeit they're coming off an average 6-5 season, if this team had an offense last year, they would have probably won a state championship. That's how talented their defense was. Their defense only gave up 14.5 points per game, I believe, a season ago, which is an unbelievable thing. It's something this Helena offense is going to really enjoy, I think. That's a test that you want early in the season to show what you need to work on, give you some good tape, some good things to look at moving forward into some important region games. I think this is going to be a closely contested game. I think that Helena is going to be a little bit better than they were last year. They're going to win some games. They're going to compete in the region. I think they'll battle for that fourth and final playoff spot in that region with Pelham and Homewood. Teams like Jackson Nolan and others will also have chances and may end up getting it. But this is a team that will be back to competitive football this year, and that's what really matters. And I can't wait to see what they do under head coach Richie Busby. So we have just a couple more games to touch on as far as the AHSAA schools go, and it's going to start in 5A. Briarwood has the week as a jamboree against Vestavia, a chance for them to really tune things up. So they'll have that opportunity. Did so last year, went on to obviously go 14-0 before falling in the state championship. So we'll talk a little bit more about Briarwood next week. But we're going to talk about the Shelby County Wildcats in their first matchup against Childersburg this Friday night. And it's a key game to watch the Wildcats, not just from a standpoint of how hard they play and how physical and tough they are, but from a standpoint how they carry themselves. Obviously, it was known that they got into a fight with Jemison at the end of last season to close out the year. Was a big deal and wasn't a good look on the program. Head coach Heath Childers knows it, and he'll tell you, he'll be honest with you, he didn't know whether he was going to be back this year. So that's one of those things that is going to be important to see how he not only handles it, but how the team handles it as well, because what he said is that there's been a major program shift. There's some guys there that weren't on the team last year. They've done some things to really fine-tune and make this program a lot better. And that started directly after the season ended last year. They went straight into it and figured out what they needed to do, and now there's a complete buy-in. The program has shifted. There's a change, and they're going to be doing things a lot better, I think. Have faith in Coach Childers. I think he's going to do a good job this season. I think they have some talent. I think they have the chance to compete for a playoff spot, moving regions again this year. They'll have that chance as well. So their schedule is going to be difficult at times, but I definitely think that it sets up for them to make a run at the playoffs this year. This first game against Childersburg, both of these teams were losing teams last year, finished with records below 500. Childersburg, I believe, was 5-6. Shelby County was 3-7. So it's going to be an interesting game to watch unfold. I think these teams are both fairly even on paper. But when that's the case, I'm going to go with the county team. I think that Shelby County is going to have their opportunities. The style of offense they run, while it's traditionally an option offense, they have some exciting playmakers. They're going to throw the ball a couple more times a game this year than you're used to seeing. So I expect them to come out. I expect that offseason shift in focus, the program changing in the weight room as far as focus mentally. I think that's going to pay off in this first game against Childersburg. So now we'll jump down into the 4A classification, what used to be 3A for Montevallo. They jump up one classification into 4A this season, and they're going to start with a team that's in the 5A classification against Marbury this Friday night. So that's going to be interesting to see that one unfold, see how Montevallo really handles a team that would have been two classifications higher than them a season ago. Now they're going to be taking on a team that's just one classification higher, but it gives us a feel for what to expect as far as region play goes, because they're going to be competing in a region against teams that were either in 5A and have moved down to 4A, or American Christian, who gave them their worst loss last year and was a 3A team. So I think this is a Montevallo team has so much talent back that can be extremely good this year, and it really starts with the offensive side of the ball. Both their quarterbacks are back, and neither one are playing quarterback. That's how talented this team is. Malik and Bennett is going to take over there at quarterback. The other two guys that were there last year are going to move to skill positions. He's the kind of guy that can get those skill players the ball in open space at the quarterback position, and I really think that's going to pay off down the road for this Montevallo team. I think they're going to have a chance. They really could finish as high as second in their region despite that jump up from 3A to 4A, simply because they returned just about everybody, have some talented receivers back, talented offensive line, their defense, everything is back on this team because they had to play so many young guys due to injury last year. So I think that's going to be a key thing to watch unfold. If they stay healthy this year, those guys are playing, say they're sophomores, they're really playing like they're seniors this year. And if they stay healthy, this could be a team that's going to be dangerous to watch under head coach Brandon Wilcox this year. So we'll see how they do. This will be an interesting test against Marbury. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. There's no telling. This is one of those that you really can't predict because you don't know what to expect from either team. But I really like Montevallo's talent that they have back this year, and I think they can edge out a close one-possession game in this one. So the last AHSAA game that we have to talk about this week is going to be Vincent against White Plains. They'll be hosting White Plains this Friday night. And really an important game to see how Lucas Weatherford, the new head coach, handles things moving forward. This is a talented Vincent team that really should be able to make the playoffs and should have a chance to finish second in their region. Lynette bumps down to 1A, the state champion in 2A last year, bumps down to 1A. Lafayette's going to be their toughest opponent in that region. Everybody else is a toss-up. Vincent has their entire roster back besides receiver Xavier Kelly, who was obviously a gifted receiver out wide last year for the Yellow Jackets. But with the talent they have back, quarterback Dusty Davis back, running back Chris Hardy back, who is a guy that ran for 300-plus yards in one game last year, was easily over 200 in several other games. He's going to be a stud at the running back position. I think one key last year, they were a team that was on fire in the middle of the season, and then the injury bug struck. They were one game away from the playoffs, one region win away from making the playoffs. Chris Hardy got hurt very early on in the first of those two games, was out the last two. And so I think an emphasis from Weatherford this year is going to be on depth, getting guys some rest, making them understand that they don't have to play every play because they will be playing on both sides of the ball as well. If this team stays healthy, they're going to be an extremely talented, dangerous team to watch moving forward, and it may be the best Vincent team we've seen in a very long time. Last time they made the playoffs was 2014. I predicted them to do it last year. If they stayed healthy, they would have. I'm predicting it again this year. I think they can make the postseason, and it's going to start with a game against White Plains on Friday night where they really need to get some momentum. The biggest problem they're going to have in that game is that White Plains is a 4A school, Vincent is a 2A school. But when you get down to that level, most of the time, even at 4A, you're going to have guys playing on both sides of the ball. They may have a little bit more depth, but I do think that Vincent's going to be able to hang tough. I think they're going to have a chance to start off with a big win, which is really going to propel their season forward with all the talent that they have coming back. So the final thing we'll talk a little bit about our AISA and ACSC teams, as well as Hope Christian School is unclassified this year. But last week, the opening week of the season for all but Hope, as they started the week before, won a big game that week. Last week they fell to 1-1, but this week Hope Christian's going to have a chance to take on Tabernacle, a team they beat 88-72 last year. So a lot of points put up in that game, and they showed last week in their loss. They lost 66-48. They showed in that game that they could still put up the points. So I think that Hope's going to have a chance to bounce back this week. And you know, this team's playing with a lot of passion, a lot of heart and desire, because they aren't in they are unclassified this year. I think that makes them want to play and show that they are out there for a reason every week, despite there not being any reason or any playoff hopes at the end of the season. So that's a big thing for Hope Christian School. I think they're going to bounce back, move to 2-1 with a win against Tabernacle this Friday night. But starting with our AISA teams, we're going to start with Coosa Valley. This is a team that unfortunately lost their opener, but they were taking on a very good Hooper Academy team And I think Hooper Academy's up. I think Coosa Valley is going to be up once the season ends. This is a very young football team under first-year head coach Jamie Scruggs. He's a guy that is going to get these guys playing better and better as each week goes along. He's a football guru and knows what to do when there's some tape to look at. Now they've got that tape. Freshman quarterback Brayson Edwards is a big key. If he can get going, obviously it was a little bit tough in his first game on a varsity football team, but if he can get going, he's going to carry this team a long ways because they have so many skill players at every position on offense, and their defense is going to get better and better with repetition. So Coosa Valley is going to be taking on Pickens Academy, a chance for them to bounce back this week, and I think they're going to do it. Pickens Academy is down this year. They lost to Kingwood 34-0 last week, and we'll talk about Kingwood in just a minute and how impressed I am with that. But lost to Kingwood 34-0 last week. That's a team that Pickens Academy beat 60-0 a season ago. So Coosa Valley should have the upper hand in this one, especially with that week of repetition and tape to look at and get things going moving forward. Cornerstone going to be game 2 there. They're looking to start 2-0 under James Lee again this season. Got a big win last week against Sparta Academy by a final of 41-14. It was a game that was close in the fourth quarter. I believe it was 28-14 at that point. But then the Cornerstone defense, which started really strong and fast, came back with a vengeance late, forced 2 fumbles inside the 5-yard line, one of which was a scoop and score by Jake Blankenship. They go on to win that one 41-14. Now they're taking on a Springwood team that picked up a 23-12 win against Success Unlimited last week. Not really sure what to take from that, but I do think if Cornerstone's defense shows up like it did last week, this is a dangerous team week in and week out, and I think it can carry them to victory. Their passing game needs a little work on the offensive side of the ball, but they have so much talent at the running back position that they can run the ball every play and gain yards. So I'm sure we'll see a little bit more of the run game this week, but with that defense combined with the run game, keeping that lets your defense rest a little bit, even though a lot of them are playing both sides of the ball, which is going to be key. So, and it also keeps the other team's offense off the field. So as good as their defense is, I think they're going to be fine in this one as well as moving forward throughout the season. The last game that we need to talk about is going to be between Kingwood and Evangel. Both teams opened with dominant wins last Friday night. Kingwood with a 34-0 win over Pickens Academy, as I mentioned earlier. And last year, this was a Kingwood team that finished 1-9, still made the playoffs, but it was a struggle under first-year head coach Todd Bradford last year. They've come back. They are better, according to a lot of the coaches. They are a much better squad this year, and that's going to make for this one for an interesting game to watch. Evangel, obviously, the defending ACSC state champions. They start with a dominating win as well, 48-0 last week over Evangel Christian from Montgomery. Showed that they have a lot of talent. One of their starting backs in Noah Shears did break his ankle, so thoughts and prayers go out to him. It's obviously a tough blow. He had just gotten there as a transfer, but they do have a guy by the name of Will Farrell that is an unbelievable talent. He scored 3 touchdowns last week, 4 in the state championship last year, and they also didn't even break the surface on the offensive side of the ball. Tyler Henderson back at quarterback is a solid quarterback with plenty of talent to throw to as well. So I expect their offense to continue getting better. Obviously, both teams' defense is unbelievable. Pitching shutouts in the first game of the season, that shows a lot, and I think that's going to continue over to this week. They both have some offensive talent, but I think the defenses are really going to show up, be very physical in this game. It's a rivalry, 2 teams from Alabaster, so I think we're going to see a lot of physical, tough defense, and I think whoever just is able to make that one more play on offense is probably going to be able to win a tight game between these two. So that's going to do it for our first show out here from Calera High School. Obviously, we have a lot of exciting games to look forward to this Friday night, a lot of action that will be taking place on the opening night of high school football. So make sure you get out and support your teams. It's going to be a beautiful night, hopefully, this Friday. Nothing like fall football weather coming back under the lights on Friday night. So it should be a lot of fun. Normally on these shows, we'll be recapping a lot of games, naming our SCR stars of the week. So there's going to be a lot more to this video than what you saw today, but we'll be doing that in each segment when we also look ahead to the next week's games. But Friday nights, we'll be doing our Facebook Live videos again. That's what our main thing is with previewing. I did a lot of that in this show today, but we'll be doing it again this Friday night. We'll be out at Herbmont Park for that Chelsea Oak Mountain rivalry. We'll have coverage at all of our games across the county. Neil Wagner, our managing editor at the paper, will be down here covering the Calera Pelham game, so you'll have a great story there from this game of the week here in Calera. But one more thing, don't forget about the magazines that'll be coming out in the paper this Wednesday. They look great. They'll be in the Shelby County Reporter, so pick up your copy. If not, email me, call me. We'll make sure that you find yourself a copy. We'll be handing them out at the home games this Friday night, as well as moving it forward through the rest of the home games throughout the season. But for now, that's going to do it here from Calera High School.